You got into the safety business because you wanted to protect people, but somewhere along the way, the job started controlling your time, your schedule, your priorities, even your income potential. What if the expertise you've built over the years in the field can give you something more? More freedom, more control, more ownership of your future. I'm Sheldon Primus, the author of 7 Steps to Starting a Profitable Safety Consulting Business and the host of the Safety Consultant Podcast, with more than 350 episodes helping safety professionals become consultants and grow their career. Consulting changed my life. In fact, I'm a full-time RVer, and one consulting contract paid for my home I live in today. Now, I help safety professionals build their own consulting practice through bi-weekly coaching calls, accountability, and personal guidance. But this program isn't for everyone. Start with the Consultant Readiness Audit at sheldon.coach.
What if everything we thought we knew about safety was just interference? From the host of the Rated R Safety Show and the founder of Safety FM comes the complete Signal Transmission Trilogy, now available in one powerful edition. Safety, in my opinion, the book that started the conversation. Safety Mutation, where the boundaries of culture, systems, and belief begin to break. And now, Safety Transmission, the final piece of the signal. For the first time, all 3 books are together in one volume. The Signal Transmission Trilogy, Complete Edition. This isn't just about compliance. It's about consciousness. It's about decoding the way we think, lead, and live, inside and outside the system. Whether you've been following the signal since the beginning or you're just now tuning in, this is the version to own. Search Signal Trilogy on Amazon or visit safetyfm.com to get your copy now.
How's everybody doing out there? Welcome to Safety Wars for Thursday, April 9th, 2026. Yeah, we had some other stuff going on last night, so I couldn't be on the air. Thanks for hanging in there. A lot of comments on our podcast, videocast, or live program from Tuesday. That was April 7th. Go and check it out. We pretty much covered OSHA news and EPA news that night. Now, there was a debate on LinkedIn today. There was a discussion, very heated there, about HOP 1 and HOP 2, where you have on one situation where you have, where you have one situation where, here, let me just bring it up.
This is Mission Control Houston. 8 days, 26 minutes into the flight of integrity on the Artemis 2 mission. You've been enjoying the views inside.
We're watching that. Sorry about that. We were watching that before that. I've been watching Artemis 2, and they're due to splash down tonight outside of San Diego, like 100 miles outside, something like that. So they have enough of a safety margin, right? Here it is. I won't mention the person's name because I don't know. The title of the post is "The System Didn't Make You Do It." A common belief in safety is that the system creates the behavior, a notion rooted in some of the people who have been on this program, right? At first glance, it seems progressive and enlightened suggests we move beyond blaming individuals, recognizing that people are shaped by their environment. I'm going to say this. I'm sure, with a number of HOP practitioners out there, something like this might have been said by somebody, and it's taken out of context. What do we say here, right? We have all the principles for HOP and everything. You can go and look them up to 5 or 7, depending on who you listen to. But it's more commonly 5, and with a possible 6, where controls save lives. Right? 2 of them. Blame fixes nothing. Right? And sometimes people, that's where they stop. And even when you're communicating with people, what happens? You say one thing, you send them out a message, and what's it received as? And you hear people say, well, blame fixes nothing, and that's where they stop. Right? Remember, context drives behavior. And somebody on this long thing here said, well, what about the guy who is driving a forklift and is operating the phone? Is it the system, or is it the person to blame? A little bit of both. Perhaps, well, what's the context? Why was he on the phone, on the forklift? Was he talking to his boss and his boss required him to call while he was driving the forklift? So, well, Jimmy, that's nuts. That's crazy. Dude, I've seen it. You know, with that. How about the system allowed him to do it. The boss allowed him to do it. Maybe there are, what's in the context also? We have people out there who don't care about human life. Well, what do you mean, Jim? What do you mean? People don't care. Of course we want to preserve human life. Okay, maybe you want to preserve human life. Maybe I want to preserve human life. The religious deal, the religious tradition we belong to wants, to preserve human life. Guess what? There are a lot of people out there who could not care less about preserving human life. Well, what do you mean, Jim? They don't care less. We had a story here a couple years ago. I shared it on there. I don't recall sharing it recently. There was a pharmaceutical company in northeastern Pennsylvania that had a guy cut off a supervisor, no less. Cut off a whole bunch of lockout and tagout stuff so he could test the system. And when it was determined that he's the one who did this, it's a story for another day, he said, what do you mean? I needed to check that, and we have a vendor coming in that had to work on that. That vendor is costing us $30,000 a day. They said, okay. He said, the injuries from that are going to be $5,000. Where he came up with that number, I don't know. So I'm saving you money by cutting the locks. Really? That's how a lot of people think. And again, is it the system? Is it the content? Blame the worker? 100%. Now, what happens when you just blame the worker? Well, the worker was using that cell phone on a forklift. Okay, what's the context? Number one, we covered that. Okay, you have a manager there, maybe, who saw this and said, look, this is like the only guy that knows how to operate a forklift. So guess what? We're going to let this one slide here on that. And then he might get caught. So, well, he's a bad person for using that. Isn't the manager also a bad person for letting that happen? I doubt it. I doubt the manager is going to take the hit for that. It's always going to be the worker. Or how about, let's take it out of a forklift. How about you're on the job and you have 6 pairs of gloves here, different types. And on a hazmat job, that might actually happen. You train the worker, hey, look, this pair of gloves is for this job. 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 And this pair of gloves is for this job. And if you use the wrong pair of gloves for whatever the job is, there's an injury. Who's to blame for that? Is it the worker for picking those? Well, he's an idiot. He picked up the wrong set of gloves. Shame on him. What a jackass. I told him not to do it. Blah, 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 blah. Or is it the manager who didn't attend the safety meeting training, most likely, who said, oh, just put on a pair of gloves and go over there. What's the issue? You think the manager is going to take the hit on that? No, the manager is not going to get injured. The manager is not going to take the hit on it. And that is the system, and current with no accountability, right? And with no accountability. A manager with little or no accountability or moral fortitude or anything who doesn't care. That's the system allowing that. And who set up that system was a manager somewhere, or an owner. Think that owner and that manager is going to take the hit on that? No. They're going to blame the worker. There's a very well-known, extremely well-known petrochemical company. I won't mention the company, obviously, because they probably drag me in front of court here. And they have it in their system, right, that they set up at the main office there. Very large company. You've heard of it. And for years, I'm told that they reformed this a little bit, but for years, it was blame the worker. You know why? Always blame the worker? Always. Because they set up a system of incentives and bonuses for the managers of the company, the plant managers, assistant plant managers, safety professionals, what have you, where you had a bonus, right? A certain percentage of whatever, however they calculated it. And for every accident you had, every serious near miss, right? Every release, right? But it was mostly with worker accidents. They would go and have a certain percentage knobbed off that bonus. And another, so now people are living, I don't care who it is, paycheck to paycheck for an awful long time in this country. Now, let's say that the bonus, and these bonuses was like up to 10% of your salary was the bonus. So now you're making $250,000 a year, $200,000 a year, 10%, $20,000 bonus you're getting. Sometimes it was much higher than that. All right, now someone gets hurt. Well, now instead of that 10%, you're going to get 9.5%. That's $2,000 out of your pocket. Okay, $2,000 out of your pocket. Now you're costing real money to those managers. How do you think those managers are going to react when you have 2, 3, 4, 5 injuries out there, and it's costing them personally thousands of dollars? How do you think that? How do you think that? You think they're going to blame the worker or blame the system with that? You think that they're going to be anxious to go and adopt a HOP system or something? We know most companies are somewhere in the middle, right? And that's where they're going to be, is somewhere in the middle, because there's also an incentive to use behavior-based safety or safety one. Traditional safety. Why? What's the incentive? Looks really freaking good for presentations and to shareholders and to the public. Look, we did all these audits. We're 98% safe. We only find a problem 2% of the time. Well, what's the back office doing? You find a problem, you're not going to freaking document that. We may take it down, we're not going to document that. You think those managers are going to take the blame for that, or is it going to be the worker? That's the system that we're talking about that is set up. And what happens is when you start to move from traditional behavior-based safety, or like my commercial for on Radio R Safety Show, and here, right, where you have a perverted view of behavior-based safety. With behavior-based safety, you're generating all the data, you're making graphs and nice and colorful. You can put everything into AI now and get a trend analysis very easily. You could do all different types of stuff, and it looks good. Oh, look, we did all this stuff. But what happens? It's mostly lies put in there, right? And what happens is when you start to move towards a more human and organizational performance thing, which was never meant to be quantified. As I pointed out to someone, very difficult in the HOP world to quantify things. In the behavior-based safety world, very easy to do. You have an unsafe act, you have this, you have that, blah, 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 blah. we're going to quantify that. In the hop world, right, a little bit of psychology is involved with there. How are you going to, let me get the bleep button on here, right? Hold on. Let me get the bleep button up. All right. In the human and organizational performance world, how are you going to quantify if someone is a hole? You're not going to be, very difficult to quantify that. And as I also pointed out to the person, I said, it's very hard to quantify whether someone's an hole, right? Short of breaking out and perhaps the hare's psychopathic checklist, but you may not be able to quantify it, but you can actually usually identify who's the hole. Remember, and that's just the way it is with that. Very hard to quantify HOP. And what happens is often companies who adopt HOP, human organizational performance, what happens is now that you're reporting things that were hidden, that were lied about for years, that were covered up, that were ignored, now all of a sudden you get more data that gets thrown in there. And it looks like, holy crap, now look at this, we're doing horrible. We went from a 97% safe rate for that graph. Now we're only at maybe an 80% because we found 17% more problems here. Oh my God. And now another HOP principle comes into play here. What's a HOP principle? Your response to failure, your response to situations matters. And I'll be honest, as a HOP practitioner here, which is what I do, sometimes, I try to pull out the remainder of my hair, and I want to do that. And I get that, it's like, oh. And it's like in that movie, The Birdcage, of Robin Williams. On the inside, you're Madonna. But on the outside, you're nice, calm, cool, and collected. You have to be. You're forced to be. And it's your behavior modification and how you personally are going to respond to that. Not all near misses, not all good catches, or however you want to describe them, are a negative. They could be positive. And look at the positive. We have all these issues and we're working on them. We know what these issues are. We have a more accurate thing going on. And we know where we're able to actually develop real trends. We're engaged in the workforce. And, okay, well, now we know we got to engage. Now that you're not acting like a hole, people are going to want to deal with you a little bit more, maybe. Maybe they're going to be a little bit more open. Maybe they have a better idea than you do, right? Because that's it's not a principle, but it's a practice where the worker might have a better, and usually does, have a good solution to something. You try to get the work as done line closer to the work as planned line. And the more you narrow that gap, chances are you'll have less risk out there. It's a safer workplace. All that goes into that. It's not, right? But what happens is people don't follow through with the whole system, and because there's incentive on that to not follow through with the whole system, not to look at the whole thing. And you say, well, Jimmy, what do you mean there's incentive not to follow through on the system? The incentive is you have time pressures, you have schedule pressures, you have a whole bunch of pressures and a whole bunch of other contexts that may impede that. With that. And you have to prioritize things. You don't, right, with that. And it's and these fake deadlines people put in. You have to have that accident report, all done by the close of business today, and it's like 3:30 in the afternoon, and you close of business is 5. You have to have everything done by blah 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 tomorrow afternoon. And as I pointed out in a meeting today on one of the projects I'm involved with, OSHA is like 6 days where you have to determine whether something's recordable or not. If you have a really serious, right, if there's, let's say OSHA gets involved in your accident investigation, like if it's a catastrophic situation, if there's a fatality, if there's something like that, how long does it take them to do the investigation, to get to the bottom of things? When they're and their focus is compliance, right? It may be compliance or compliance enforcement, but it isn't compliance. How long is that going to take them? If you said 6 months, you're right. All right, now, and I don't know, and I imagine some of the state OSHAs are relatively the same, are pretty much the same. How about if you're in the Chemical Safety Board, where you're interested in really getting down into the nitty gritty and going in there and finding out really what happened? Years. The answer is years. What? How about an airline disaster? I don't know if there's an actual time frame, no, a statutory time frame, but it may take a year and a half, right? With that, we had that crash in the Potomac, the collision between the airliner and U.S. Army helicopter. Might have been National Guard, but one of those, right? Hell, they're still investigating. There's still reports. It took over a year, and now it's April. Guess what? Up until recently, they were still issuing stuff, and in my knowledge, they may still be issuing things. So you can't rush things. That's the context that we're dealing with. So, you know, it's like this. It's human nature to see a pattern, right, where you see a pattern, and the first time you look at it, you see a pattern. A to B to C to D to E to F to G. And if you had to go and you had to do this every day, and you were not allowed to examine the pattern, and you see, and every day you have to go from A to B to C to D to E to F to G, and that's what you're doing right? You wouldn't get, first of all, you probably have a psychological issue. You'd have burnout, like you would real quick. The human brain is going to say, A to B, okay, I see what the pattern is, now we're going to go over the G. You're right, and that's what part of being in that old skills mode is. With that, what's my point with the pattern, right? When you go, what often happens is you see an issue here, A to B to C to D to blah, 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 blah. Blame the employee and that fact for that one time. That might have been the correct thing where, hey, the employee actually, no, for whatever reason did this and it was deliberate, it wasn't accidental. It wasn't like the system change or anything like that. And then what happens, it makes it very easy. A to B, hey, the last time that we had this accident, the employee did X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? And we told the employees not to do X, Y, and Z, and they did it anyway, and the employee is to blame. Now you're going to say, well, wouldn't the employee be to blame if he's doing A to B? And, you know, isn't the employee to blame for that, Jim? Break out the hierarchy of controls of NIOSH, which is a standard health and safety document out there. You go out there and break that out. At the top, what do you have? You have elimination, then you have substitution, engineering. Then there's a dividing line, usually, or a color code change. And you go into like an orange, right? So you start with blue, or maybe green, and then you go down when you get to engineering controls, it's yellow, and then there's a color change to orange. And I know I'm not supposed to use colors, but for this illustration, I think it'll work. Now you have a color change to yellow or orange for administrative controls. Now rules are in administrative controls, and then you have red for PPE at the bottom. And then on the left-hand side, you have that least desirable. Oh, least desirable. Let's talk about that. So you have least desirable there. And what are the least desirable things? Administrative controls and PPE. Now you told the employee, don't do X, Y, and Z, knowing reference on a very common right, on a very common reference that, right, here you go, right, let me share the screen. Right, here we go, right, with the standard hierarchy of controls. You get down to the bottom, it's red. So now you know, right, so now you know that if you're going to give rules and you're going to tell employees not to do something, and if they don't do it, you're going to blame the employee, you know that that's an administrative control, right? You know that that's an administrative control. And you also know that's one of the least effective way of doing things. To have an administrative, the only thing worse than an administrative control is PPE. You're going to tell an employee to wear PPE. That's the least effective. Look at this. That's the least effective control. So what inference can we draw just by looking at this graphic? What's the inference? The inference is you can't rely on rules. You can't rely on those administrative controls. You cannot, which means you have to go into what's it called? The system, setting up a system, so maybe we don't have down to administrative controls or PPE. That means you have to set up a system. So they inadvertently proved human and organizational performance, where you're setting up a system that doesn't fail based on the hierarchy of controls. Now let's look at another one here. Right? Skills, SKR model, right? SKR model. Here, let's look at this. Can we get this here? Hold on. I swerved into something I didn't plan on swerving into here. So you go into the Jens Rasmussen skills, right, SKR model, and what your goal is here is to get down in the simplified graph out there to the skills mode, which is the least, right? Or you try to get closer to it, which means that you have the least amount of errors in that, where you're familiar with the job, you have a system set up and everything else. And you're basically, for a real simplified thing, what we call autopilot. Now you're down on that end. And in the middle, you have rules, or you're making decisions all the time. You're applying rules. You're following that man and everything else in your decisions. That's a much higher error rate. Most of the times they tell you the error rate more than 10 times. Then you have the knowledge or the lack of knowledge mode, where guess what? It's like if you ever heard of the phrase, the first time you ever do anything, you it up. Well, guess what? That's what that is. Right? I'm not saying the word, by the way. I'm just hitting the button. But you know what I'm saying, where half of the time you're screwing things up because you don't know what you're doing. You're applying knowledge from other tasks to this task, and it may or may not apply, and you're going to, you're going to it up. Now, again, you have a system set up, and you say, we're going to change the rule, which means you're going to change the system. And I had a conversation with someone today. If you go and you start changing the rules, right, and your assumption that human error is the cause of most accidents, that human error, you start changing things up. Are you going to be comfortable with putting that worker in a higher error rate mode? And number one, number two, how's your reaction going to be? Because your reaction to failure matters. And then, so I always say, before we go and we do this, and it doesn't matter what the procedure is, are we going to be okay with putting that person in a situation where we're going to have higher error rates? What are the likely error rates, and what are the likely consequences going to be? Are they going to be able to fail safely? Are they going to be able to fail in such a way that they're not going to get hurt? And I know hurt is a very inexact term. Now, in many ways, So maybe the right word would be injured. All of this goes in there. There's not this whole thing with HOP, right, and behavior-based safety, where they're on two different extremes and blah, 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 blah. I know on one extreme of behavior-based safety, it just doesn't freaking work. And they're being sold a bill of goods. One organization I know of, they've been trying behavior-based safety my entire career, and they can't get it right. They can't get the results that they need to get right. So what do you think their solution is? What do you think? Well, the right person hasn't been in office, hasn't been in there yet. So we have to get the right people, a group of people, because people are to blame for everything. Right? Man, I can't believe I'm on like 29 minutes on this rant. So, people are to blame, so we got to get the right people in there to do that, blah, 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 because they don't know how to run the system. And by the way, we have this new tool called AI, and we're going to run everything through the AI, blah, blah, and damn it, you people aren't doing this. Yeah, right? That's dangerous. You also have, and the impression that's out there, because the behavior-based safety people that have invested their careers, a lot of them that have very good systems that probably don't work, that aren't like that extreme, that actually work a little bit more towards the center and more towards the HOP, and they actually work, right? Their thing is, well, HOP, everyone's there, well, one side's HOP, well, they're, they don't want to do anything, they don't want to enforce any rules, they don't want to, and that's not, I've never heard, in 6 years of doing this, I've never heard once on any podcast, any book, and that's extensive, just ask my wife, my library, where someone said, well, accountability goes out the window. Todd Conklin says accountability does not go out the window. HR does not go out the window. Jay Allen on this network has never said that behavior-based safety is going to go away. We're going to have pure HOP. And we're not going to blame everybody, blah, blah, anybody, blah, 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 and on the other extreme. I haven't heard that. If you have heard them say that, please send it to jim@safetywords.com, and I'll take a look at it, and I'll be correct. I'll correct it. Because if someone is on the other end of it, right, guess what? Not even a union is going to be on the other end of this. An individual union member, but the official, a union safety professional was not going to be on that. Well, they're going to, right, because they have to defend their union, and they have to defend the worker to the point of, up to the point of being silly on this. Otherwise, they look like idiots. So that's what I'm saying here. Now, you're going to say, well, Jim, what's your solution to this? You went through all of this, and well, I don't think Jay Allen will mind me sharing this. What is the solution to all of this?
It's really fun to talk about practitioners as they move out. He's busy, too. He's out there in the world making a difference.
Not only do we have a rant,
and so that's good. That's a really good thing.
We also have a solution here, and I'm going to share screen. I did not ask Jay Allen to do this, but I don't think that he would have a problem.
And application.
We have
because I think that's really valuable, and it's
July 13th,
2026. Easy to talk about theory. Talking about theory is very difficult.
All of your questions might be answered, or at least you'll have an answer, or maybe a better understanding at
there we go.
Reality
Shift. That's James's podcast, Human Performance
Guide.
Right,
over in Orlando, Florida. This is going to be at a
put any fire
right. We're going to have Nick Weatherly from. I've never met him, but all accounts are he's a great guy to work with,
as you possibly can,
and everything. With this, I've heard him on a couple of things. He's actually really good. Like the guy, Todd Conklin, right? Pre-accident investigation, right? One of the leaders here. I actually was talking to someone yesterday.
You asked for these, and I thought
maybe
you were crazy.
Jimmy,
but we did it.
With what you're saying, you sound like Todd Conklin. I'm like, wow, that's a huge compliment that I got here because Todd, I'm with this here. And then we have our leader at Safety FM, Jay Allen. recent author
Hi,
of
everybody.
the Signal
Todd Cochran,
trilogy and the owner of
and
the
along with
Safety
my
FM
friend Jay
network.
Allen, Safety FM,
Set this whole thing
we've
up
produced 3
here.
audible versions
and we have
of
this.
my
When's the
books.
event? July
You
13,
can listen
2026.
now if you get
Go
your information
to,
while you drive down the road or sit on a plane. These books are available. Workplace Fatalities, The 5 Principles of Human Performance,
Shift.
and my first book,
You can get there through
Revolutionary Acts,
safetyfm.com.
are all on Audible
Here we go.
now.
Here's the concept.
Take some time if
Reality
you want,
Shift, an
and download and enjoy listening.
This is not
to
a
the
workshop,
dulcet tones
a
of
certification
Todd
course, or
Conklin
debate. Reality
reading his
Shift
own
is a
stuff
one-day in-person
in as slow a
symposium
fashion as
designed
he
for
possibly
professionals
can.
who want to step back from the daily doing and focus on deep thinking. This is also not a rehash of the old pop versus BBS arguments in the past. We're not here to watch frameworks fight for dominance.
Your online radio, the new online radio that makes you happy.
Hosted in a private theater setting, this event provides a cinematic atmosphere.
You are listening to a renowned safety expert, Dr. Jay Allen, on Safety FM. Changing safety cultures, one broadcast and one podcast at a time. Join the fun on social media and find us on Facebook at Safety FM.
Order of events.
If you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
this is Mommy's Jam.
then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the-right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the-right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Give us some love on social media. Safety FM.
Within those systems, and you have
broadcasting live from the Safety FM studios in Orlando, Florida. Here is your host, Dr. Jay Allen, on Safety FM.
This episode of the broadcast and the podcast is brought to you by Safety Focused
that's the other
Moments.
thing. If we're in a complex organization, you're not going to have
They're
one and
consultants
the other.
that want to
You're gonna
help
have
you
both.
get the
You're gonna
safety
have
culture
PBS.
you've been looking for.
Signal
For more information, go
Hey,
to
Alan, those is the day.
safetyfocusmoment.com.
Hello and welcome to Safety FM. This is Jay Allen. Depending on your age, what comes to mind when I say Saved by the Bell? Let's have that discussion here today on Safety
right
FM.
Where we are here on Safety Wars. We're out there. We want to hear what's going on in the field. We want to hear what's going on in reality. Apply
Safety
that.
expert, Dr. Jay Allen.
Right, but you do absolutely need
Changing
the academic.
safety cultures,
Yeah, it's
one
critical that you have
broadcast
it.
and one podcast at a time.
So
Join
we're
the
stepping
fun
away
on
from the
social
traditional
media
hotel
and
ballroom
find us on
into a private,
Facebook at
independent
Safety
cinema.
FM.
Please note this is not a stadium-style luxury theater with recliners. Practical, table-seated environment designed for you to spread out your notes, comfortably observe and absorb the content. Right, you will have access to a venue menu via QR codes at the tables. You can see order meals and refreshments.
No, don't worry about it. You're not in a
directly
time
to
warp.
your seat
But when I
throughout the
thought
morning
of
session.
Saved by the Bell, that's
here
exactly
we
what
go.
comes to
Right,
mind.
here we go.
And it's about a little
please
TV
note,
show.
This is an
Not
alcohol.
to give you some big, long, drawn-out story in regards of Saved by the Bell, but
some of you
originally
out there may
Saved by
see
the Bell
that
was a
as
show that was
negative,
called
but I see
Good
that as
Morning,
a
Miss
positive.
Bliss. And the show essentially
And
evolved into
here we
something
go.
called Saved by the Bell.
Why Monday? Come down early.
And you're
enjoy
probably
your
sitting
weekend
there
in
going,
Orlando,
what
then
does
enjoy
this have to
join us on
do
Monday
with
from
safety?
9 a.m.
We'll get to
5
that in
p.m.
a
to get
moment.
Down to business.
The other part
And,
that I think
I-
about all the
I
time is the different
intend to be
array
there.
of characters that were inside of this
I
show. The show,
already
of
have
course,
the ticket.
evolved as the years went
I
on,
arranged
but
things
there was a
with
gentleman by the name
my
of
wife.
Zach Morris,
She
Kelly
might be there. You may see
Kapowski, AC Slater,
Mrs.
Lisa
Safety
Turtle,
Wars
Jessica
down there.
Spano,
How's that?
and then the principal,
With
Richard
this. I don't know.
Belding,
We'll
and
see.
Screech was another person that was actually on there.
But
As the show
essentially,
evolved, so did the characters.
this is what's going on.
And
you
a
get
lot
to
of
see
times,
Safety
what
Wars
takes
Junior
place is that we
and
take a look at
the
some of these
future
shows and
Miss
go,
Safety
oh, it's so character-driven,
Anyway,
and we need to pay attention to each
What it
character.
comes down to here is this
As the years
whole,
went on
thing,
this
you know,
show
it's
called
not one or
Saved by
the
the
other,
Bell,
it's both.
number one, I was obsessed with it
Both
when I
are
was
good,
much younger.
right?
That was
They're
many, many,
practiced
many
by
moons ago.
nice people.
And I had to get home to see what was
People
going
know
on
what the
with
hell they're
the
doing.
Saved by
There
the Bell
doesn't need to
gang
be
that was
all of
based out of
this,
Bayside.
controversy. There doesn't need to be all of this where we're at each other's
And it was
throats.
interesting as I
And I'm
looked
gonna
at that
say,
show on
that's
how the
what's going
characters
on.
developed and how they changed throughout
And
the years.
with that, we're going to go.
I believe the show had something like 84 episodes or something along those lines before it actually changed into the different incarnations of the show.
Wow. Aye.
And as I looked through the show, I came to realize that it compares very similar to our systems.
SafetyFM.com.
Essentially, we
Is
start
your
off
safety
with
training
one path
old,
on how
stale,
our
and
safety
hackney?
system
Is your
should
safety
look.
trainer still preaching a
An
warped
idea,
version of
a
behavior-based safety?
presentation,
How about safety training that
a
is
way that
designed to
it's
actually
formatted
address and
starting
assess
off.
your hazards and
And I'll
liabilities,
tell
and
you
it's
that a lot
not
of people that I
standardized
speak with,
baloney from
they started
generations
off
ago?
in
Contact the
safety,
Safety Wars
looking
team
at
at
it
safetywars.com
in one
or call me, Jim Polson,
I know I'm
at
not talking about band, just in case.
845-269-5772.
But they
Remember,
started to
if
look
you
at
are
it of
receiving
going,
this
hey,
message, you are the
safety
solution
should be
to unsafe
formatted like
workplaces.
this. Boom, boom, boom. We'll use the example of Hello, Miss Bliss.
The Safety War Show.
Disney Channel originally started off with the show Saved by the Bell on how they wanted to do it. And they came to the conclusion it wasn't going to work, and all of a sudden, it was sold to NBC. Now, I'm not saying go out there and sell your safety program to someone else.
Strongly encourage.
But what I'm saying here is that sometimes when we start off looking at safety,
option is available for you.
we look at it as it's going to start off in one direction and it changes as we go.
Will take some deep
So the formatting of the show was not bad when it started. It was actually a pretty decent show, especially if you like those little, little teen show when you were a kid, depending if you watched it at the time.
Scandal and heartbreak collide.
But as the show evolved, it was very interesting to see what it would become.
Imagine confronting your unsafe supervisor who just
It was
happens
pop
to be
culture.
your ex-wife's new hubby.
That was
Talk about a
the
powder
reference
keg.
and the emphasis
wait,
of the
there's
show.
more.
It was
We've got
what
an
were the
exclusive
dealings
interview
that
with
Zach
a
was
corporate
going
exec
into,
who's
what was the
taken out
love
life
triangles that could
insurance
potentially
policies on
happen.
his riskiest workers,
And I'm not saying that
hoping to
there's
cash
a love
in on a
story in
deadly
every
mishap.
safety endeavor, but
You
keep
heard
in
that
mind
right.
that we
It's a
are
real-life
involved inside
plot
of this because
twist
you're trying to
you
keep
can't make
people
up.
safe. You're not
Tune
trying to
in
do
as
something
Jim
illegal
Posel,
or something
CSP,
unethical.
Our very own Jerry Springer
But
of
when you
safety
go into
dives
an
deep
organization
this explosive
and you're
confrontation.
trying to
Sparks will
speak
fly
of
and secrets
safety,
will be exposed.
you have to start
Catch
off
the
with
full
where
episode
the
on Safety
organization
Wars
is
on
at.
YouTube and your favorite podcast
You have to
platform.
build off
Don't miss out
of
on the
what's
drama
there.
that could save your life.
So what do I mean?
Like and share now.
If you walk
and
into
stay
an
safe,
organization and they are doing, let's say, behavior-based safety, and you're trying to get it into a human and organizational performance scenario, you have to remember where the journey has been already and where you want to take this journey to go. So there's some sunk costs associated to behavior-based safety as it started off. The same way that there were some sunk costs associated to Good Morning, Miss Bliss. Now, they did use some of the reoccurring characters as they moved on to Saved by the Bell, and that's what you probably have to look at. Look at your safety system inside of the organization on how you want to change it and move it forward. As you move it forward, remember there was a structure that was there.
Safety Wars.
I don't always say that, the previous version
That's what we're
of
doing.
safety
We are
does
rocking
not
the
work.
safety
I
boat
just say,
tonight.
hey, you need to build off of that structure.
Why are we doing this?
And
Well,
those are the
it's
things
fun.
that we tend to forget as
second
people
thing is
inside of an
this.
organization and inside
Doing
of the
the same thing
organization
over and
on
over
what
again
they've already spent inside of
and
the
expecting
organization,
different results
what has already been done.
Is insanity.
Build off of those features. They'll help you out in the
Keeping around with
long
these
run.
old systems
And I'm not
that
saying,
may or may-
that the kids
may
from
not-
Save the
usually
by the
not
Bell were
working.
not cute kids and they couldn't help out. But
Not gonna
that's
get
what
us
you want
to
to
where
do.
we
You
need
want
to
to
go.
take the best of your system
Which is behavior-based
that was already
safety,
existing
positional safety,
and see what
gotta get
structures
from
you can
zero
build
accidents.
off of.
That's our goal.
A lot of times we go in there and
in
we just look
reality,
and
yeah,
say,
that would
hey,
be
we need
great.
to take all this stuff
Just
down
like
and
not
move
having
forward,
accidents.
not realizing that a lot of
what
times the
ends up
structures are
happening is
good.
what I
The
said.
structures can be
Zero reported accidents. Zero reported
used in this new concept that you're going for. Maybe some of the pillars
Stuff doesn't get
could be the
reported.
same depending on how you
Let's
have it
report
set
it.
up.
Let's do things. And let's hear one more.
One of the worst things that we could ever do is go inside of an
fired up.
organization and say how things are so terrible and not try to use some of the foundations that are already there.
A CEO of a very
Remember that
very
people need to
large
ease into things. It can't be a drastic change.
Huge.
You can't walk into an
Right, you've
organization
heard
that has Hello, Miss Bliss
He said
and change it to Riverdale
no, he
or
was like,
Beverly
well,
Hills
look, I'm not
90210,
really
depending on your
exactly
age
sure.
demographic,
That's a regular example.
and expect there to be a dramatic
have an
change
example?
overnight. You have to ease the concept of the change. I'm saying that your system that's already there can have potential growth depending on how you look at it and do the movement. You can't have Pee-wee football and change it to the NFL overnight. This doesn't work that way.
Do you have to sign off on
I'm not saying the journey is going to be extremely long, but the journey needs to have some impact inside of the organization using some of the foundations that are already there. I know I've said that about 3 times already, but I want to make sure that I emphasize that, because sometimes we forget on how important some of the original structures are. So I'm not trying to ruin the show Saved by the Bell for you for the next time that you actually hear it, see it, or go around trying to remember part of it. It is available on Hulu, and that's not a plug, just giving a reference there.
I said, okay.
But remember, things do change as you move forward. And because something started in one place, it does not mean that it can't change into something entirely different, depending on how you want that structure to work.
What is the understatement of the year?
Before we close out today, just want to reference a couple things relatively quick. Number one, safetyfm.com is always our site for you to know anything that's going on within the Safety FM arena, including our hosts, guests, different podcasts that we have out there. Also, if you have not downloaded it, take the opportunity to download the Safety FM app from either iOS, the Google Store, or enable it as an Alexa skill on Amazon. Please give us a review on your favorite safety podcatcher.
Our standard business practice.
This way it helps spread the word out there on what we're doing here at Safety FM. I know we have multiple shows, but we always love to be able to interact with the general public out there. Besides that, I don't have much going on here today. I have been your safety manager and host, Jay Allen. And until next time, be safe.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.
I usually go out of business.
SafetyFM.com.
That's what I used to really overeat. I can see if I had 10%.
You love them enough to do anything for them.
Probably not survive you, right? The U.S. Department of Labor has
checking NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You got into the safety business because you wanted to protect people, but somewhere along the way the job started controlling your time, your schedule, your priorities, even your income potential. What if the expertise you built over the years in the field can give you something more freedom, more control, more ownership of your future? I'm Sheldon Primus, the author of 7 Steps to Starting a Profitable Safety Consulting Business and the host of the Safety Consultant
a little bit
Podcast.
pissed off at me, and I'm okay with that.
50 episodes helping safety professionals.
A good chunk of you safety people out there are misclassified. Double check.
Changed my life. In fact, I'm a full-time
telling
RVer,
you,
and
you're
one consulting
misclassified.
contract paid for my home I live in today. Now, I
Well, you
help
go and you
safety
double
professionals
check.
build their own consulting practice through
Unemployment
bi-weekly coaching
insurance,
calls,
weekly claims report,
accountability,
and the
and
week
personal
of
guidance.
ending April
But this
4th, the
program
advanced
isn't for
figure for
everyone.
seasonally adjusted
Start with the
initial
consultant
is
readiness audit at
219,000,
sheldon.coach.
increase of 16,000 from previous
SafetyFM.com.
Let me point out to you, right here it is. All right.
Streaming 24/7 on SafetyFM.com.
That's right. This is pretty level. When you look here, it's pretty level. Don't let the media screw around with these numbers. This is all pretty level.
The Accidental Safety Pro with Jill James on Safety FM.
And you see, you know, for all the data here from the prior year and everything else, not a lot of, we're dealing with little tiny percentages. So why are we being again, this is your thing. Part of being
This is the Accidental
Wars
Safety
mission
Pro
is to
brought
make
to you
sure
by
that you're
Vivid
not
Learning Systems
manipulated
and the
and
Health and
ask
Safety
those
Institute.
important
This
questions.
is a
you're
special
afraid to
edition
ask.
of the podcast
So,
recorded on March 17th,
U.S. Department of Labor
2020. My name is
recovers
Jill James, Vivid's Chief Safety
$122,000
Officer.
back wages for
Today I'm joined by
140
two guests,
Mississippi
both of whom
HVAC
have had long and experienced careers in
U.S.
nursing,
Department of Labor
public health,
recovered
and as
that money
educators.
for 140
Joe is a registered
workers
nurse
following
with
an
a master's in
investigation that
public health.
found
She has been certified in infection
Mendenhall,
control and served as
Mendenhall,
president
Missouri, I
of
guess,
Minnesota's
based,
Association of Infection
cooling
Control
and heating
Prevention.
and electrical employer
She's
failed to pay
organized
workers
regional
their full
infection
wages
control conferences
in
and
violation of
consultations for
federal
her career,
law.
as well as
Department's
serving
Wage
as
and Hour
adjunct
Division
professor at
determined that the
Minnesota State
company
University
operated,
St. Cloud
operating,
and the Department of Nursing
blah, blah, blah,
Sciences
did not
since
include
2006.
non-discretionary bonuses when
Sue,
calculating
our other
overtime,
guest, is also a registered
wages
nurse
for
and
workers
nationally
that failed to
certified
issue final
pediatric nurse
paychecks to
practitioner.
employees
She too
in
has a master's
violation
in
of Fair
public
Labor
health
Standards
and a
Act.
doctorate in educational administration.
Right? And
Sue's past work includes
I don't know what to
Department
tell
Chair of
you.
Nursing
You got to
at
pay
the
your
University of
people.
South Dakota and
again,
Associate
everyone's
Dean
innocent
at
till
the
proven
University
guilty.
of Wisconsin School of
The
Nursing in
U.S.
Eau
Department of
Claire.
Labor launches
She's
new
the founding
tools to help
director and
businesses
professor in the
strengthen
Department
supply
of
chains,
Nursing Science
stop
at
unfair
Minnesota
foreign
State
labor
University
practices.
St. Cloud, meaning
Right?
both
Well,
Joe
Washington,
and Sue have
the U.S.
taught
Department of
public
Labor
health
today
nursing
announced the
to
launch of a new
college-level
suite of
nursing
voluntary
students.
self-assessment tools.
Combined, they have a lot of years of experience.
As companies to strengthen their
I've
global
asked both
supply
of them
chains.
here
Let's
today
see
to
how
bring
that
their
looks.
unique perspective as nurses on issues
Ushering
of
in,
infection
USA,
control
ushering in
and
a
how
new
what
era
they've
of
been practicing
American
and
worker
teaching
dominance.
throughout their careers
S,
is critical and
as in
relevant
stopping
today
the
for all of
egregious
us,
labor
whether we're at
practices of
work
our trading
or
partners.
with our families.
And A,
So if you want to know how you
advancing
can
the
play a
interests of
personal
American
role in
workers and
flattening
enterprise
the
on
curve
the
and
global
spread of
stage.
COVID-19, our
U.S.
guests
Department of
today
Labor's
give us
Bureau
some
of Labor
confidence
Affairs
on
increases
how we
American
can
job
all
and wage
do that
growth
together.
by combating
Welcome
foreign
to
labor
the show,
abuse
ladies,
and unfair
and thank
trade
you for making the
practices
time today.
globally.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
global
It's
supply
great to be here.
chains that undermine U.S. prosperity and security.
So first question,
And, go and check that
just
out
to set the
on
stage
there. It's
for our
right on the
audience,
press
what
release page.
is infection
for the,
control?
Department of
Infection
Labor.
control is the prevention of infection as
Right.
well as
So here we
stopping
go.
the spread of infection.
U.S. Department of
The original
Education
focus
and
was
U.S.
in
Department of Labor
healthcare,
announced
but as you
first
can
grant
see,
competitions
in the
under
current
elementary and secondary
world
education
we live in, it's throughout the
partnership.
community.
Today, the U.S. Department of Education and Labor
And in
issued a
nursing, we
fiscal,
go way back. Florence Nightingale, who is
year
founder of
2026
nursing. That
competitions
was
for
one
the
of her
Teacher and School
major,
Leader Incentive Program and the
activities
Innovative
that she
Approaches
discovered
Leadership
that during the war,
Program.
that if they
These competitions
kept,
represent the next step in the
kept some of the
administration's
soldiers
efforts
that
to
were
align
farther
workforce
apart
and education
and
programs,
just
expand
prevented
freedom,
and
and
hand
bolster
washing, that they
education
prevented
effectiveness.
the soldiers from getting
Right.
sicker. So
And
this goes way back in
along,
nursing. It's one of the bases of nursing care.
again, this is the
Certainly, and one of the
ongoing
things Florence Nightingale
thing,
discovered during the
practice of
Korean
federalism,
War
when
when she
we
was
are
in Istanbul
devolving
was not
things
just
back
that
to the
social
states
distancing,
on this
but the
here.
environment, the
And
importance of
again,
hand
this is the
washing
whole
as
thing. They
well as the
dismantled
cleaning
the
of
system.
environmental services.
And some would argue that it's
So
throwing out the
infection
baby
control
with the
practices
bathwater.
have they really
here,
changed that much
we're
over
throwing out the
time,
bathwater with the
or it
baby.
sounds like maybe things have kind of stayed the same.
Here.
Like what
So,
was
you know
discovered
what
way
I
back
have
then
not
is still
done
what we're
here?
practicing today.
I think so, but I think
Because
that
I forgot to do
people
this. And I didn't do
maybe
this the other day
back when
because
they
we had
knew
audio
people died
issues
of
that prevented
diphtheria, when
So
the
we're gonna
people
do
lived through the
today
polio outbreak.
on here.
And before we had
Okay, I need
antibiotics,
to edit this
people
out.
realized what a
video.
frontline activity good hand hygiene was.
From Feature Story
I
News
think
in New
that,
York, I'm Mitch McCann.
that-
NATO
that
Secretary General Mark
focus
Rutte
in
says
our
that member
technical
countries
world
are doing
had gotten
everything
a little
US President
codified, but
Donald Trump
the
had
focus
requested
right now is
to
for
strengthen the
really
military
to
alliance, even if some were
realize that
initially a
in
bit
spite of
slow to
all
provide
the-
support to the US amid its war with Iran. Reuters news agency is reporting that the NATO chief has briefed some European capitals that Donald Trump wants concrete commitments within the next few days for help securing the Strait of Hormuz. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
The two men met at the White House on Wednesday amid tensions within the alliance over the Iran war. The US president has threatened to withdraw from the transatlantic security alliance in recent weeks. He argues that European allies haven't provided enough support for the US war in Iran while relying on US security guarantees. The NATO chief acknowledged that some allies were a bit slow to support the US. He noted they were also a bit surprised, given President Trump opted not to inform them before starting the war. But he argued that today allies are providing a massive amount of support, saying they've heard and are responding to President Trump's requests. On Thursday morning, Mr. Trump posted on social media that NATO was very disappointing.
US President Donald Trump says the US military will remain in the Middle East to ensure that Iran opens the Strait of Hormuz. In a social media post, he's detailed America's non-negotiables ahead of talks with Iran this weekend. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
Donald Trump is making it clear that he wants what he wants and he's prepared to use the US military to get it. He says that all US ships, aircraft and military personnel with additional ammunition and weaponry will remain in place in and around Iran. That's until both sides reach what he's calling a real agreement. And he flags two sticking points, red lines for the US. That Iran must have no nuclear weapons and that the Strait of Hormuz must be open and safe. The US president sticking to those positions and making it clear he will not concede on those points. He said if those don't happen, then the shooting starts. More threats that are showing the cracks in diplomacy ahead of planned talks between the US and Iran in Pakistan on Saturday.
Meanwhile, European leaders are alarmed over the situation in Lebanon and the impact on the fragile US-Iran truce. On Thursday, France issued a strong statement condemning the massive strikes carried out by Israel against Lebanon. The Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's contempt for life and international law was intolerable. Ross Cullen reports.
The French Foreign Ministry said the strikes by the IDF were, quote, all the more unacceptable as they jeopardise the temporary ceasefire between the United States and Iran. The IDF said it was targeting Hezbollah sites in Lebanon, but Israeli forces reportedly detained a Spanish UN peacekeeper and fired warning shots at an Italian convoy. Madrid and Rome demanded answers from the Israeli government, with the Italian foreign minister warning of a second Gaza. EU officials also warned that high prices and potential shortages of jet fuel could last into the summer.
And Russia's foreign ministry has condemned the Israeli attack on Lebanon, saying that it undermines chances for peace in the Middle East. Daria Bondarchuk reports from Moscow.
Russia's foreign ministry said Moscow believes that the ceasefire agreement between the United States and Iran also implied end of attacks on Lebanon, a condition Israel denied. Moscow underlined that Lebanon was attacked again right after the ceasefire with the United States took effect, when a diplomatic settlement to the Iran crisis became possible. The foreign ministry in a statement urged for an immediate end of violence against Lebanon.
3 Indian provinces are voting today amid concerns about a rise in the cost of living due to the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Ishan Garg tells us more from New Delhi.
Across nearly 300 seats, more than 35 million people will cast their ballot. And Assam Prime Minister Narendra Modi-led BJP alliance is seeking a rare third consecutive term, facing a 6-party Congress-led opposition riding on anti-incumbency. In the south, in Kerala, the ruling Left Democratic Front is fighting to defy history and win a third straight term as the Congress-led UDF, buoyed by strong local body election results last year, mounts a challenge.
Here's a recap of our top stories. US President Donald Trump says the US military will remain in the Middle East to ensure that Iran opens the Strait of Hormuz. European leaders are alarmed over the situation in Lebanon and the impact it's having on the fragile US-Iran truce. And Russia's foreign ministry in Moscow has condemned the Israeli attack on Lebanon, saying that it undermines chances for peace in the Middle East. From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Mitch McCann.
All right, we're back here. Here you go.
From the front lines of the safety war, it's Safety Wars, with your host, Jim Posel on Safety FM. Get ready to face the harsh reality.
So we're going to wrap it up there. I mean, I really can't go into some of these other stories here. Possibly, we'll see what goes on. And I always say that, all right, this weekend. And things are changing out there. We might be able to be back in our home studio for a couple of days next week. We'll see how it goes. So, for Safety at Wars and the Safety FM Network, This is Jim Posel signing off, and that's what I got. And let's remember, all these stories we shared here and everything else, everyone's innocent until proven guilty with us. And I do change certain details too to protect the safe and the unsafe, and the guilty and the not guilty, and every other shade of flame to go around.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.
You got into the safety business because you wanted to protect people, but somewhere along the way, the job started controlling your time, your schedule, your priorities, even your income potential. What if the expertise you've built over the years in the field can give you something more? More freedom, more control, more ownership of your future. I'm Sheldon Primus, the author of 7 Steps to Starting a Profitable Safety Consulting Business and the host of the Safety Consultant Podcast, with more than 350 episodes helping safety professionals become consultants and grow their career. Consulting changed my life. In fact, I'm a full-time RVer, and 1 consulting contract paid for my home I live in today. Now, I help safety professionals build their own consulting practice through bi-weekly coaching calls, accountability, and personal guidance. But this program isn't for everyone. Start with the Consultant Readiness Audit at sheldon.coach.
What if everything we thought we knew about safety was just interference? From the host of the Rated R Safety Show and the founder of Safety FM comes the complete Signal Transmission Trilogy, now available in one powerful edition. Safety, in my opinion, the book that started the conversation. Safety Mutation, where the boundaries of culture, systems, and belief begin to break. And now, Safety Transmission, the final piece of the signal. For the first time, all 3 books are together in one volume. The Signal Transmission Trilogy, Complete Edition. This isn't just about compliance. It's about consciousness. It's about decoding the way we think, lead, and live, inside and outside the system. Whether you've been following the signal since the beginning or you're just now tuning in, this is the version to own. Search Signal Trilogy on Amazon or visit safetyfm.com to get your copy now.